Hi, my name is Brandon Ingram from Dismay Comics, and I just stepped into the vactor-verse.
I am Vactor, and this is the Vactor-verse. We have a returning guest this week, all the way back from when we were Comic Book Kaiju, returning wonderful independent comic book publisher Brandon Ingram from Dismay Comics. Their current titles over at Dismay, and I think Brandon will talk about it, include The Gallows Man, Dismay Avenue, and the new Kickstarter, Tales from Town City. So, Brandon, thank you very much for joining us again here in the Vactor-verse.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Yes, man, I loved our talk last time, and it was all dark and gothic, and we were talking about horror stuff. But this time, I think it'll be a little bit lighter conversation because the new Kickstarter, Tales from Town City, these are some funny stories that you have created here. Like I was very much, I got very thankful. I got a sneak peek, and these stories, I was laughing very loudly. I was like, "Whoa!" I was expecting them to be horror at first, but I was like, "This is straight up comedy." So that's what I wanted to ask you about first. And like I said, I'll have a link to all your stuff in the show notes, especially with the Kickstarter. But I want you to talk about Tales from Town City. Was there anything specifically you wanted to go for in these issues? Whether it was going towards the comic route, or did you just want to tell a good story?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the compliments first. Thank you. And with regards to like this first issue of Tales from Town City, it ultimately derived from, because this is a spin-off of The Gallows Man, but
Ah,
people don't have
yes,
to read The
yes.
Gallows Man to enjoy Tales from Town City. But it was one of those things where The Gallows Man is this world that's kind of forming, even though that's going to be a mini series. Like, there's little characters within it. Like, for those that don't know, like The Gallows Man, best way to describe it is it's 1960s Adam West Batman and Inglorious Bastards. Like, it's like
Oh
that
no.
matchup basically, because it's 1940s. He's beating up and killing Nazis all while having the fun jovialness of Adam West and saying the campy lines and stuff like that. So I mentioned that because Tales from Town City is a spin-off from that. So you have like thematically, it kind of ties in with that because it has the minor characters from Gallows Man. For example, like the first story in Tales from Town City, it's two homeless villains who are trying to use expired coupons at a convenience store.
Yeah.
Like that's the synopsis of that story, and those characters are introduced in The Gallows Man. Very minor characters, but they are there. And then the second one is it's about a mortician that basically is trying to make sense of these dead villains' names. There's dead villains that are brought in, and he has no idea about these names. Like, it's like, okay, your name's the Frog. You dress as a frog. That makes sense. You, on the other hand, you're called Walrus. You don't really resemble a walrus at all. I hear you waddle like a penguin. That may have been a more fitting name. But you do have a whiskery mustache, so I guess it works out. And he's like, you, on the other hand, make no sense at all. You're called the Jackal. You don't resemble a jackal at all. You're wearing a green suit. Why weren't you called the Green Gangster or something? It's not a great name. Better than the Jackal, though. So he's just losing his mind, talking to these dead bodies, no one else in the room, all while incinerating the bodies. And then the last story is Fierce Pets. PETS is an acronym, stands for Precise, Ecosystemic, Tactical Squad. Kind of harkening back to the Wildcats days of like covert
Mm.
action teams. And with that story, the basic synopsis of that is a team of super animals slaughter poachers. It's a lot of fun. In terms of all the stories, that's the one that's like the most action packed, the most
Mm.
gory as well.
Yes.
Um, just a fun time. Yeah, it's one of those things where I do love writing horror and making horror books, but also like comedy. I like action as well. There's some of that in The Gallows Man, some with Fierce Pets, but uh, I just I like various genres. Do love horror,
Mm.
but love writing me some comedy. Even stuff like the one with the homeless villains. Like in terms of the plot, it's so minor. It's the villains just trying to use expired coupons. But I just love like situational or like dialogue based comedy, and that's what that whole story basically is.
Man, and I loved the comedy in that issue, specifically the tinfoiled hypnotism.
Thank you.
Your it, I don't know how to describe it, but basically the the punchlines, like the situations, it feels like, hey, I've been in this situation. I feel like I can relate to these guys, and like I said, I was just laughing. And also, I got to give kudos, Juan Romero on the art.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Man, this specifically popped out to me. I was like, man, I would read a ton of this, like this tinfoiled guy. And I've been seeing you on social media with your hypno glasses and your
Yeah.
tinfoil hat, and also laughing at, there was one you did where you had your real glasses and then you had the hypno glasses, and you're
Oh
like, and
yeah.
these are my
Yeah.
real glasses. So yeah, you've been doing some great stuff on the social media and promotion side, but I
Thank
like
you.
that hypno character. Are we going to see more of Hypno Ray, and are we going to see more of this, or is it like a one shot for you?
So it's possible. Ultimately, it is kind of a one shot. They are briefly in Gallows Man in that series. They'll be briefly in issue 3 of Gallows Man as well. But um, it's possible. Whenever I first wrote it, like these 3 stories back in November or December, I didn't really have a plan to like do more with them, but a lot of people have been liking both the Hypno Ray and Rusty Hook story as well as the Fierce Pet story, to where I do have some ideas. I may possibly make a one shot for just each of them, or do a small mini series for each of them. I'm thinking on. So it's possible you'll see them again in the future.
Perfect, man. I can't wait. I want to see more. If you want to see more, definitely go to the Kickstarter link, like I said, and give our friend Brandon here some love. Show him some love on the Kickstarter, because these are some comics that are worthy. I think there's a lot of times where I see um, independent publishing and some other stuff that is getting either like a Kickstarter or do they even have Indiegogo? Remember Indiegogo? That was another one.
Indiegogo is still a thing,
Okay.
but in terms of comics, it's not as big in
Yeah,
terms of crowdfunding for
that makes
comics. And then
sense.
there's other
Yeah.
ones that are popping up like Zoop. From what
Ooh.
I heard, Zoop is good, but it's like it's not a name yet. Like if it's a
Oh,
name, then I'll consider it. But the thing with Kickstarter is like it's an established name. Like
right.
people
Right.
know Kickstarter
Yep.
compared to Indiegogo or
Right.
Zoop.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely. I want everybody out there, if you're listening or if you're watching, definitely support this, because this is some stuff worth supporting. Because I've seen some stuff that was not worth supporting out there. I'm not going to name any names, but this one by our friend Brandon here at Dismay Comics is fantastic. And you were talking
Thank
about
you.
kind of the inspiration behind this, and the story ideas coming to you. That was something that we talked about on the last episode when we were talking about kind of your personal story, like that movie theater, and kind of taking bits of your real life and then putting it into your comics. Did you have a lot of that on this go round, or was it more just these were just ideas that you had kind of rolling around? I'm interested. I'm always curious about, how do creators create? How did these ideas come to you?
So in terms of did any of this stuff happen to me? No, but with the ideas that came up, it was ultimately ideas that came up from writing The Gallows Man, because The Gallows Man ultimately it's a fun, funny book. If you want to dig deeper into it, you can. You don't have to, but there is with The Gallows Man like this society, this world, like Town City itself is just like desensitized to violence, because it harkens back to
Hmm.
like the golden age of comics, like the literal golden age of
Hmm.
comics, where like you had characters, superheroes, whatever it was,
Right.
like killing muggers, like doing various stuff, and you would have a little 5-year old be like, I want to be like so and so. Like I look up to so and so, the guy that's like murdering muggers and stuff, and like murderers and stuff like that. But so Gallows Man, it's basically that where the world is very desensitized to violence, where it's like, yeah, get him, Gallows Man, and like the radio announcer, there's a radio announcer narrating stuff in the comic where it's like, the Gallows Man got him again, hung the frog out to dry tonight, like that sort of stuff, and everyone's just happy and cheering. But so with this comic, with Tales from Town City, it's kind of doing that satire. Some again, this is fun. Like, yes, it's satire, but it is fun, funny comics. It's playing into satire a little bit with like the tenfold hypnotism thing, where these are two villains, but it's like, how bad are they? Like when you see them, it's like they clearly, the way they talk, they want to be villains, but like they're not that bad of people to where like you'd almost think like, oh, like feel a little bit bad for these guys. It's
Right.
kind of like a pathetic situation in a way, even though they are kind of dumb. But like, yeah, so it's that, as well as just like fierce pets. Like if you want, you could say that's like a hyperization of like, hey, stop poaching. This isn't the degree to go with that, but it is ultimately like a extreme violent stop poaching type story. And then with the making sense of names, that whole story derived from like me reading Spider-Man, as well as other comics where like that's the most meta of the three stories, is that one, because the mortician is trying to make sense of these names, and some of them fit, some of them it's like, I don't know why you're called this character, like you don't resemble that animal or whatever you're trying to come off as. So that's kind of like inspirations how some of these stories came about.
Nice. And that was art by Helen Bolton on Making
Yes.
Sense of Names. That's another interesting aspect of independent comics and publishing. How do you hook up with the artists, and how do you find different people to come in? And do you say, okay, this art style will fit this story that I have? Like, how does that work?
Well, with Helen specifically, then I'll get into Juan. With Helen, the first comic I worked on her with was the Dismay Avenue #2. She did a story in that called Acolyte. It was like the Dr. Seuss type art style one.
Right.
She did the art for that one. Then after that, I got her to do like a 1-page little thing in Dismay Avenue #1. And then after that, I was working on the Gallows Man. And I was like, I want to find a good artist for this. And I had seen like the Dr. Seuss type art style. I was wanting to see if she could like alter it a little bit, if she was adaptable, and she ultimately was very adaptable with her art style. I commissioned her for a couple pages just as a test, loved them, and I was like, hey, can I hire you for the book? And she was like, yeah. So we've been working on that ever since.
Nice.
And so she's the main artist on the Gallows Man. And since Tales from Town City is a spin-off of the Gallows Man, I was like, I kind of want to like have her do basically like backups in Tales from Town City, like these little 4 or 5 page stories. It's not the main story or the main stories, but like just a little nod to like, hey, like this is the artist from the Gallows Man sort of thing. As well as like another nod that I did was Thomas Tikas, who does the main cover art for the Gallows Man. Like he did like this cover.
That is nice.
Did this cover. He also did issues 3 and 4. Like that cover art's all done. So he did the main cover art for that, and I commissioned him to do a variant cover for Tales from Town City. And it's like the 2 homeless villains like huddled around a trash can looking at some moldy cheese. Just as a nod to like, hey, like this is the guy that did the main covers for Gallows Man. So I mentioned that. And then with Juan Romero, I was actually a fan of Juan's before
Ah.
like I hired him, because there was a comic called Slowpokes that came out on Kickstarter. There's 2 issues of it where it's basically, what if sloths were fast? Like, what if they had speed, basically? Like, this laboratory gives them super speed, and they are like vicious killers. And it's like a B movie scenario, basically, for it. This was Slowpokes happened before Slaughterhouse, like that recent horror movie where it's like the
Hmm.
sloths killing and stuff. Slowpokes was before that. It could have inspired it. I'm not saying it did, but it could have
Hmm.
inspired Slaughterhouse. But I really enjoyed that, and I saw how he could do like crazy, funny violence with animals, specifically like sloths in that story. So I was like, I want to see if I can get him to do fierce pets, because that, like, a half, if not a quarter of that story is like the crazy, over the top violence with animals killing people. So I got him to do that, and then through that, I saw how well he was at facial expressions,
Hmm.
because
Yes.
that's a big thing. Is like, with comedy and comics, if there's not a lot of action to it, like facial and emoting is like very important. I saw how good he was with that, and I was like, I want to get him to do tinfoiled hypnotism as well. And I think he did very well with that, because
Oh
that one,
yeah.
like, those are two. It's done by the same artist, but 2 different stories. Like, one's action packed, gory. That's where you can see some of the humor and stuff. Well, whereas the other is like mostly conversation based.
Right.
He's able to like do emotions with the faces so well that I think it turned out great.
Oh yeah, 100%, man. This is an artist that I want to continue to follow on his
Oh yeah.
journey because I loved everything that I saw here. We were talking a little bit before off mic about this year, 2023, and since the last time you were here, you've had a different kind of journey between Dismay Avenue and now this one, and I wanted to ask about this year in particular, 2023. What's been what has your journey been like, and what's it been for Dismay Comics this year?
So this year, because yeah, like looking at it now, it's been almost a year since the Dismay Avenue Kickstarter launched, and then I shipped out stuff. That's another thing for 2023, is when Dismay Avenue 1 and 2 shipped out. I shipped all of that out to everyone, the comics and T-shirts and various stuff. Um, but a big thing with this year was doing a little less of the online stuff, as in Kickstarters and stuff, and doing more with conventions. Like, that was
Mm.
a big thing with this year. Like, so far, I've done 5 or 6 conventions. I
Oh
have one or
wow,
two more that I'm doing this year. One in like 2 weeks, basically. Um, but yeah, that was interesting. And what was interesting was my very first one I did was a big convention, which I would recommend and I wouldn't recommend. I ultimately did it because I just wanted to see how a big convention would do. I had talked to
mm.
people before, and they had mentioned like, hey, don't get your hopes up with big
Mm.
conventions and stuff. So I didn't have like super high expectations to where like, if 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 I didn't do well, I'd be like, this sucked. But I am glad I did it, because hey, I got to experience like what a big convention was like, as well as experience, through it being a big convention, all of these smaller conventions I've been doing are like cake in terms of like
Ooh,
knowing what to do and stuff. Like,
right,
having that big one gave me so much experience to where all these others are super easy. And I did like fairly well at that convention. Got
nice.
to spread the word out about Gallows Man. The thing that sucked, this was back in January. Dismay Avenue 1 and 2 weren't shipped to me yet. Like, there were issues with the printer. They weren't shipped to me yet. So I just had Gallows Man 1 and 2 at Fan
Ah,
Expo New Orleans. That was the big convention.
mm,
But it did sell fairly well. The
nice.
biggest plus side of Fan Expo was I got to re-meet Jim Kruger, who was
Ooh,
he's a writer for, he's done DC books like Justice with Alex Ross. He did Earth X. He's done various other stuff. But he was kind of a big inspiration in like me pushing myself into actually making a comic. So I got to, because I met him like back in 2019, and like at that time I was thinking about making comics and stuff, but hadn't jumped on it yet. I'd studied all the stuff, but hadn't jumped on it. And a conversation I had with him back in 2019, like pushed me into actually doing it.
Nice.
So re-meeting him like 4 years later, I'm now in Artist Alley. I can see him like 20 yards away at his table and stuff, and being able to go talk to him and just like tell him like, hey, like thank you, like you're the reason I'm here. I
Hmm,
absolutely love this. As well
that's
as
cool.
like him wanting my to read a couple of my books. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll be right back. And I went to go get Gallows Man 1 and 2, handed it to him, and I expected him just like put it under his table or whatever, and I would have been fine with that. But he like opens up one of them, flips through, starts reading, and not only like reading, he's like also laughing. And he gets to one part in issue 1. There's a character in the Gallows Man called Major Swastika, who is like it's a villain who is obsessed with swastikas, and he has like a Elmer Fudd speech impediment. Like he's German but has an Elmer Fudd speech impediment. And he got to that and was reading that. And I mentioned like the Elmer Fudd speech impediment thing. He was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so great!" And he read 3 pages of Captain's or Major Swastika like talking and stuff, and like he was reading it in the accent. I didn't even like. He was like reading. He was like, "Oh, these Wolf Westments." Like he was reading all this stuff, and I was like, "This is blowing my mind." Like he's reading my stuff and laughing and all that. Great time. Had a great conversation with
Oh
him, and
man.
even more stuff happened in terms of conversation with him later on. But absolutely amazing. And then I've done a few smaller shows since, and those, I mean, for indie creators out there, like try a big show. Don't do San Diego Comic-Con. Don't waste your money if you're starting out. Don't do that. But maybe like a fan expo, just try it out, just so you can get a lay of the land. You kind of see how it is working at a big show. But these smaller conventions are so great, because the smaller conventions, like they're not really, when you go to a fan expo, they're there to see. For like Fan Expo New Orleans, like they had Sam Raimi there. They had
Oh,
Eddie
right.
from Stranger Things season 4. They had these big stars, and it already costs like $50 to get in the door. Then it's going to cost them like at least $100 for a photo and autograph from the person. Like people don't really have much money to spend on your stuff, as well as there's so
Right.
much to look at and spend.
Right.
These smaller shows, though, you don't really have to worry about that. So more eyes are on your stuff. So
Hmm.
I really like that. And then Free Comic Book Day was
Ah, yes.
amazing. I did Free Comic Book Day at a local comic shop. It's the best I've done, like
Nice.
in anything. So I'm going to continue doing like the smaller
Yeah.
shows I have been doing, but Free Comic Book Day, I want to do that to like the day I die. Like it was
Nice.
awesome.
Nice. Man, that's great. I love hearing that. And just the kind of enthusiasm in your voice and your experiences is something that I really enjoy seeing that. So
Thank you.
definitely, I'm glad that you're sharing that with us. I had a quick question for you. I know, you, like I said, you've
Yeah.
been busy with a lot of cons and with the Kickstarter and promoting everything. But the last time you were here, we talked about Superman. We talked about our favorite Superman stories. There was a Superman anime that aired on Cartoon Network and HBO Max called My Adventures with Superman. Did you get a chance to check out any of that yet?
I want to get back into it. I watched like the first half or almost all of the first episode. It wasn't bad. It is good. I think it'll be like a great introduction for people to Superman, to get into Superman, and I do want to get back into it. And this isn't a complaint on the show. Great show, but for me personally, it was like it's it's stuff I've kind of seen, like in terms of like it's a great introduction to Superman.
Right.
Like
Right.
if you're not super familiar with Superman, this is what to go to. This is how the
Yeah.
character
Yeah.
is. Like it's
Yeah.
perfect for that. But I've kind of seen that already,
Right.
so
Right.
so I do want to watch all of it, get back into it and watch all of it, but it's lower on my priority list, kind of.
Gotcha. Yeah, I agree with you. It's one of those things that I'm interested for this next generation coming up, and my son is 2 years old right now, so he's not necessarily like he likes just because it's cartoon, so he likes that they're moving around on the screen, but he's not into the storyline of Superman and Jimmy and Lois Lane. But I'm curious, like kids growing up, are they going to be kind of like I was with the Warner Brothers, with the Bruce Timm universe with Batman the animated series, Superman the animated series, Justice League, and so on. I wonder if he's going to be into this animation, or if the next generation is going to be into that type of animated series. They have 2 seasons from what I've seen
Yeah,
already greenlit.
season two got greenlit like I think right before the first episode came out or something. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to see, like, as far as storyline goes, where are they going to go? Because, like you said, this first season is all about like the introduction and Clark's getting used to his powers, very Smallville esque. But where does it go from there? And it seems like there is, instead of serialized episodic stuff. I'm sorry, instead of episodic stuff, it's more serialized of this overarching storyline of what's going on. Not to spoil you, but the last episode ends on like kind of like a cliffhanger. So I'm interested to see where it's going to go into the next season. But again, like I echo your sentiment of this is what you give someone. It's because
Oh yeah.
it's so frustrating. And I think me and you have the same kind of thoughts on Superman in general, but it's frustrating when I hear somebody, oh, Superman? He's not relatable. He's too strong. He's too much of a boy scout. Like I can't relate to someone who is all good and has no
And the
uh
frustrating thing with it today is they have that sentiment of like, oh, classic Superman is boring, relatable, or unrelatable. He's a
unrelatable.
Boy Scout. Um, he's this, and the only form of Superman that I like that I've enjoyed is Injustice Superman, or like all these other. Like, here's the thing: I really love the Boys TV show. It's a great TV show, but people they see stuff like that. They see Homelander. They see Omni Man from Invincible. They're like, that's the type of Superman I like. Evil Superman. That's who I see him being. But it's like, no, like those are good. That's not Superman.
Right.
Don't want that. I'm the Snyderverse is okay. I'm sorry, people that love Snyderverse. I'm so glad it died because that's the route they were going. If y'all don't remember, they were going the route of Injustice Superman. You see that in Batman v Superman. You see that in I think Justice League. It was at least
Yeah,
Batman v
there's like that
Superman.
flash, yeah, that little
Yeah,
flash thing. Yeah.
yeah, and then like that deleted scene or whatever where it's like it's flash forward in the future and Batman's with Joker and cool
Yeah.
team up with like him, Mara, Deathstroke, like cool team up. But I'm so glad that whole Injustice Superman thing died because that already that has set Superman back in the public eye for a
Mm,
decade now. Um, and I love Injustice, but it's important for people to know like that's a basically an Elseworld story. That's not like
right.
Superman.
Right.
It set Superman back in the past decade to where I'm happy for shows like this coming out, and I'm happy for the way it's described, like James Gunn, what he's going to do with the DCU
Oh yes.
with
Yes.
Superman and stuff like that. It seems like he's going to bring it back to what Superman actually is, what he embodies and hopefully and it should do good. Hopefully it'll do good to where like that's what people see Superman as instead of like I want Superman that kills people. That's what I want.
Right.
I want psycho Superman.
Right. Yeah, it's one of those things I think if we can just get like one version, like that everyone can get. Like, think about like the Dark Knight, like the Christopher Nolan Batman. When that version came out, everybody's like, "Yeah, this is the Batman I love," and all this.
Yeah.
But Superman, we've gotten these different takes, and there's been these small wins, like even the Superman and Lois show that's going on right now. Like, a lot of people like that version of Superman, but if we can just get this, I think this James Gunn is going to be a far-reaching, this the amount of people who are going to the movies and the amount of exposure that's going to get. If we can just get a win right there, I think that's going to, like you said, the Injustice Superman setting him back. If we can get this James Gunn one to win, that's going to push him back forward
Oh yeah.
and get him back to the place that we want him to be. There's a lot of good stuff that's coming down the pipe, but yeah, I think you're right. The Injustice Superman, it's definitely something that you need, like different flavors and different things,
Oh yeah.
but
Yeah.
to make you realize, oh, that's why Superman is good. That's why we love the prime Superman, is because here's the variations and here's the versions where he could go wrong, and it's interesting, like you said, it's interesting to get, oh, okay, this is the black version versus the white version. Like,
Yeah.
there's two sides of the coin, and one doesn't exist without the other, like the yin and the yang. It's like if you have all good or all bad, then it's not necessarily interesting, or you don't appreciate good without bad, evil without
Oh yeah. Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
So I like that, having other flavors and saying, oh, this is why I like the original Superman. But like you said, it's
Exactly.
something that we shouldn't get too tied down on, the injustice being, oh, that's the cool Superman. That's the one that tortures people. And that's the one that, so yeah, I think that's definitely worth it. But if you're a Zack Snyder fan, leave a comment down below and let us know, because I want to hear from you guys.
Those movies
But
aren't bad. The most like it's 50-50 in terms
right,
of the Snyderverse.
right.
But yeah, it's different from what I want to see people realize what Superman actually is. And if you want a flavor of like of Superman almost uh, going a little bit dark or whatever, read Kingdom Come.
Yes,
Fantastic
yes.
book, and like towards the end, like if you've read it, it's like Superman has all the right to do what he might be fixing to do, but
Yes.
through people talking to him, as well as him realizing he doesn't do it. He has all the right to do what what he is about to do, but he doesn't do it, and that's who Superman is.
And that right there, like you said, that story Kingdom Come is written by Mark Waid. He's one of my favorite. Number one, he's one of my favorite writers, but
Yeah,
he's one of my favorite Superman fans. There's actually a really good DC documentary that's on HBO Max. I can't remember the name of it. It's a 3-part documentary that just
yeah,
came
yeah,
out a couple months
yeah.
ago, and Mark Waid has like a couple interviews, a couple little segments, and he talked about seeing the Christopher Reeve Superman in theaters and how that inspired him to say, there's a clip of him saying, I left that movie, I walked out of the movie and I said, I don't know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life, but it's going to involve Superman. And I was
Yeah.
like, yes, this makes me feel good as a
Oh yeah.
Superman fan. And he's the there's a couple of current books that Mark Waid is writing, but the Batman Superman team up
I
book
heard
that
it's
he's writing,
fantastic.
oh man,
Yeah.
World's Finest. I love that book. That's one of my favorite comics that's currently out. But Mark Waid gets Superman,
Oh yeah.
and I remember a report of him when the Zack Snyder Man of Steel came out, and when he kills Zod.
Mhm.
Spoiler: when he twists Zod's neck, and I don't know if this is true, but I saw this report online that said Mark Waid stood up in the theater and said, "Nope, that's not Superman. I'm out," and he walked out of the theater. So I
That's
can
great.
see him doing that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's definitely, I think you and I share the same mentality. So that's always fun to think about. But yeah, I think this Zack Snyder, I'm sorry, uh, James Gunn. This James Gunn Superman, I think, from the way that he talks about Superman, also is going to be one that is going to set things right in the universe. So we'll be looking forward to that. Also, we're going to be looking forward to Brandon's Kickstarter. Like I said, I'm going to have all the links in the show notes. I want everybody to go out there and support. There's some great rewards. There's some awesome things that I'm looking at this Tales from Town City t-shirt, and I'm liking what I'm seeing here. And I think this might be
pets on it and
oh
stuff.
yeah, this might be the way that I go when I give the pledge here. But there's some awesome things with the digital version, with the physical version, and I like that. I like the options that a lot of Kickstarters have these days of, hey, if you don't want, like, I don't have a large physical collection anymore, but I love reading digital comics on my iPad, and I can get both versions, or I can get whichever one. So I want everybody to go to the link in our show notes. And like I said, show Brandon some love, because this deserves it. This deserves everybody to go out there. Any cons coming up, Brandon? Or are you done for this year?
I've got 2 more, and then I'll stop for the year. Got to save up some money because there's other comics I want to make, and if I'm paying for which usually the cons, almost all of them will break even, and that's what I like to at least do with that.
Nice.
But I have one coming up. Most of these, if you're in the South, specifically the Southeast, like that's where you'll be able to see me at conventions. If a con in the Northeast wants to fly me out ever, I don't see it happening soon, but maybe one day, then you'll see me in the Northeast. Or if I'm somehow vacationing up there, I'd love to do that sort of stuff. But I'll be in Mobile, Alabama, September 22nd to 24th at MobyCon. It's like a big convention they have in Mobile, Alabama. For one of those days, likely Saturday, I'll be dressed up as Hypno Ray. Through the last convention I went to, I realized, I can only do that one day. Not entirely because it was kind of hot in that whenever I stepped outside of the building, but also I can't see anything with those glasses on. Like, yes, like it has holes and you can see, but like without my prescription glasses, I see like 5 feet in front of me, and that's it. So I'll probably just wear that Saturday and wear like the Dismay Avenue t-shirt the other days, that sort of thing. But September 22nd to 24th, Mobile, Alabama, MobyCon. And then a much smaller thing, October 7th to 8th, I'll be in Pensacola, Florida at Pensacon Halloween Fest. Ooh. So people in that area might know of Pensacon. Pensacon also holds a Halloween smaller convention in the fall. And so, that'll be October 7th to 8th. You can check me out there. It'll be a good time to sell Dismay Avenue 1 and 2 because it's that spooky season. Those are the next 2 conventions I plan on doing. And then I'll probably do at least 2 or 3 in 2024.
Nice, man. I can't wait to see what Dismay Comics comes out with next. Brandon, thank you very much for joining me here in the vactor-verse. And also thank you for creating some great comics, and keep up the good work, my friend.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, Brandon loves comics, and you should too.